Alright everyone, so today I wanted to do something fun. I have every horror movie that I own, the letters A through L, because I have so many of them. I can only do that many. Go through A through L and put them in tier lists. These are the ones that I own. Which ones are my favorites? You'll get to see which ones I think are great movies, that I still thought were worth buying, that I like but I won't watch much, and then questioning why I even own that movie. So you'll get to see that. I have them set up alphabetically here, except for these two. They're off by themselves. I went through my movie shelf, and then I forgot two of them, so that's why they're down there. I'll try and get them in at the right alphabetical spot. But so first here, we're actually going to start off with one of my favorites, and that's 1408. This is, I think, it's kind of tied for my favorite. Uh, how should I put it? Book written by Stephen King. It's that or The Shining, and it just depends on what I'm feeling. I think The Shining is the more famous one, but 1408 is a really good movie, and I think that John Cusack is like carrying that movie for a lot of it, and it's a really good like haunted or ghost movie. But it's also got like its own story of dealing with your own personal like demons and um, things with like dealing with death of a child, and it's just kind of like what's the story? Dante's Inferno almost, or the Divine Comedy. It kind of takes that idea but makes it modern, where he has to go through his own personal like demons and through levels of hell, and he gets tempted by with like lust at one point. He has to deal with things that uh, Dante had to in a way, if you're aware of that story at least. But so 1408 is starting off for me a really great film, and it's one of my personal favorites. So next is the vampire horror that I just recently rewatched after years, and that's 30 Days of Night. I liked it enough to buy it, and I actually think it's a really good movie. It's probably my favorite vampire movie that I've seen. I forgot how good it was until I like rewatched it because I had seen it like when it first came out, and that was so long ago. That was like 2006, and I was like, I've been kind of wanting to rewatch it or find another like good vampire movie, and so I was like, let's give this a chance, and then I was like, wow, I forgot how good it was. So um, that one for me is a great movie. It's not one of my personal favorites. While it might be my favorite vampire movie, I wouldn't put it in like my favorite like all time. Um, so it is really good though. Next is the original Nightmare on Elm Street. Some of the movies that a lot of people are going to think that I'm going to put really high, they're not my personal favorites, and I don't want to like lie about that. So I do think A Nightmare on Elm Street is a very good movie, and it is worth buying. But I don't watch it all the time, and I can't tell you the last time I've actually watched it. So it is my favorite in the series, and I do think it was worth buying, and I do want to go back and rewatch it because it's been a few years. But just in general, a lot of like the big three horror movies, excluding one movie, a lot of them I enjoy, but I'm not like a major fan of. So uh, even though I'm wearing a Halloween shirt, I do like Halloween series more than their other two. And that's kind of the thing is I just in the past, not this year, but last year, had just watched the other ones besides the first one. That was the only one I'd ever seen. And so I sat down from two to New Nightmare and watched all of them and I ranked them. That was back before I could do this. So um, now we're going with Freddy's Revenge. And I actually do enjoy this one. And even though they're not on the same level, of I would still say it was worth buying. So that's kind of the problem is like I won't watch it much, but I do think it's good enough that it was worth buying. So it's kind of like in between the two. So I'm gonna put it towards worth buying. So um, next is Dream Warriors, another one a lot of people really like. Um, and the more I've watched, I've come around to it because like the first time I really didn't like it, other than the soundtrack and like some of the kills were really good. But again, I felt like it was worth buying, but I'm not in love with it like a lot of people. Um, Same thing with this one. A lot of these are going to go. The Dream Master is going to go right there. This one, I probably will say I won't watch much. It's just not a good movie. Well, that's not true. It's not as good of a movie as the other ones. Um, I hope you can see the posters also. I had to make them as short as possible to get these in here. And then these next two, I gotta be honest, Freddy's Dead. It's not very good. And then I personally hate New Nightmare. I know a lot of people have said that that's one of their favorites after the original, but I didn't like it. I didn't like the concept of it, and it just for me just didn't land. And I didn't really like much, to be honest. I just wasn't my thing. But that's kind of how I feel about the series in general. So if you saw my ranking, you know how I feel about these. But my order was like 1, 4, 2, 3. So 2 and 3 are like tied for me personally. Like I think 3 is the better movie, but 2 I just kind of find like really fun and funny because of the whole story of it. So yeah, that's the Friday the 13th series of the ones I own. So next is A Cure for Wellness. It's okay. I I won't watch it much. So like I've seen it plenty of times, but I'm after watching it the amount of times that I have, I'm like, eh, it's just kind of like not one of my like go-to movies. I'll watch it if somebody else wants to, but I'm not gonna pick it. So next, the original Alien. This is the only Alien movie I own, and I really like this one. Um, I would definitely put it as one of the better movies here and put it under great. It's probably the best sci-fi horror, at least that comes to mind. And the design of the xenomorph is, imagine coming face to face with something like that. That'd be pretty crazy. um, so next is comes really early, but this is my absolute most favorite horror movie, and it's probably tied for my favorite movie ever. So American Psycho is going in my favorites, obviously, um, because of that. And I just find it to be a lot of genres that I like mixed into one, and I find it a lot of fun. I could talk about this movie for a while, but if I sat on one movie for too long, I just would be wasting a lot of time. But, you know, this movie has one of my favorite songs based about it from Ice Nine Kills. It's really just got one of my favorite actors ever, Christian Bale. It's got a lot of like actors and actresses that have become famous since, and I just from start to finish, I find this so enjoyable. I one time watched it twice in a week, and every time I watch it, I just laugh because it's both horror and it's hilarious. So next is Annihilation with Natalie Portman. I would say, oh, it's kind of in between worth buying and won't watch much. It's a better movie than these other two, but if I'm being honest, I'm not gonna rewatch it time and time again. So that's where I put it. But it is definitely better than those movies. So that's difficult to put it there because it is good, and I do like it, and I watch it like 3 or 4 times. But it's just really weird at times, and it's not as rewatchable as I would say like these, Nightmare on Elm Streets, where they're just kind of short and fun. Where Annihilation is like a serious movie. It's got a lot of like meaning of just life and like what we are as humans and things like that. And so it's not as easy as a watch, but I do really like it. Really, any of these categories, other than why do I own this, I like. So it's not really a negative if you're in won't watch much. It's just I'm being honest about, I'm just not going to watch it as much as these other ones. So next is actually a really good movie that came out last year. I really like it. I know it wasn't for everyone because I've heard mixed reviews on this one, but it's, I think, one of the better horror movies that deals with kind of like mental illness. Maybe not mental illness is the right way to say it, but like depression or just um, dealing with a lot of trauma. I guess like PTSD. That's the right word to say. Um, but in that movie, a little boy, his father and brother are basically being turned into the like creature, the Wendigo, and because they got attacked by one, but they survived, and that's how you actually get turned into one. And so it's like he's trying to help his family and keep them, alive, but it's just they're getting progressively worse, and he's feeding them like raw meat and dead animals, like skunks and things. And meanwhile, his teacher went through a lot of abuse when she was a kid, and can see this in him that um, something's not right. And his name's Lucas, and Carrie Russell plays the teacher, and I think it's a really good movie. So if you haven't seen Antlers, that's one that I really want to buy a T-shirt for. I do like it because I did buy a shirt for it, but it just didn't turn out right, so I sent it back, and I'm gonna wait until I can get a really good one because I that was in my top three favorite movies from last year. Um, Next is As Above, So Below. I think one of the better. It's in my top three favorite found footage movies. So I'm gonna put it right here with the Friday or the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, because I thought it was worth buying. I've watched it a few times. Every time I watch it, I like it. It's not one of those that like decreases its liking for me. And the found footage in this movie actually adds to the kind of claustrophobia of being down in the Paris catacombs. So that's, I think, a really good movie. And it's one of my favorite like posters, and the name even it's just like really cool. I don't know why. I like looking at movie posters and being like, I'm pretty sure a lot of people do. Like, oh, that's a really cool design. And I think that is one of the more unique ones, fitting of the name. So next is Autopsy of Jane Doe. Um, I'm gonna put it. Won't watch much because it's good, but it's the first time I watched it, I liked it a lot more than the following times. Every time I've watched it since that first time, it's not been as effective, but the very first time, it would have been worth buying. So I do like it a lot. It's just not one of my personal favorites. I think I've watched it now 2 years ago, and I just really haven't had the desire to watch it since. But next, we're moving on to one of my favorites, and that's the Babadook. This is a very, very good horror movie that I bought this on a whim one time. It was like literally like the first like week it came out. I just went to Target, and this is when I first started collecting movies. And I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And I was like, it's probably one of them low budget horror movies. It's not any good, but let's give it a try. And then I went home, and I was like, man, this is good. And I watched with my parents, and every time we've watched it since, they just don't like it at all. But they don't look at horror movies, I guess, the same way I do. And especially movies that deal with either mental illness or some sort of like trauma, or just, there's that psychological aspect to movies. I really get into those ones. If you notice here, these top three are all psychologically, the psychological thriller horror, 1408, kind of psychological horror comedy, American Psycho, and then definitely the most psychological horror with the Babadook. So a lot of my favorites are that, and that's just my kind of horror that I really get behind. So next we have the Bellco Experiment. This is a fun movie. I don't really know where I'd put this because I've watched it a few times and I do like it. And it was definitely worth buying, but I don't think I'm gonna watch it as much as some of these other ones. I do think it's probably like I like it more than some of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, but I just don't think I'll really want to watch the Bellco Experiment time and time again because I've seen that so many times at this point. Whereas I've only seen those Friday or those Nightmare on Elm Streets. The third one I've watched a few times now, but 2 and 4 I've only watched once. So um, that's kind of why. But I would say I like the Bellco Experiment a lot. But next is another one of my favorites, Black Christmas. And this is the original 1974 Really great horror movie. Just the effectiveness of how they used Billy. They really never show him. They just show like either him walking past the camera really fast, or the best shot in the movie is where the door gets opened up by our main character, and then she looks through like a crack in the door, and as she looks up, she just sees like a wide open eye that's just like staring at her, and he's just like mumbling to himself, and she then like slams the door on him, and then he screams, and he just chases her through the house and grabs her hair, and like you never see him throughout any of this, but it's just like it doesn't really matter who he is, but it's the fact that there's some killer in the house after her, and just like the craziness and the aggressiveness of how he's going after her. But I think it's a really great horror movie. Uh, I was expecting it the very first time. I was like, okay, I think I'll probably like this, but it's probably one of those overhyped movies. And then I was like, wow, this is actually quickly it became one of my favorite horror movies, and it's probably going to stay there. So, another one that is one of my favorites. This came out in the past few years. The Black Coat's Daughter. This really impressed me the first time I watched it. One second, I gotta move my mouse. Again, I went into it and I was like, I was hearing all this good thing, all this good like reviews, and I was like, I never know what to go with people, because the first time I've seen some movies, I've really loved them when people said they suck, and then the vice versa, where it's been like, oh, that movie's you know great, or it's like one of the best movies ever, and then I'm like, I didn't even like it. So I was like, we'll see what I go into with. And I first watched it, and it was kind of like I didn't know how I felt, and it took me like a day or two, and I was like, that was really good. And I rewatched it like 3 days later, and it's one that I've rewatched a few times, and I really like it, especially knowing everything that happens. And I did pick up on everything that was happening fairly early in, but um, I like that it takes its time to get to know the characters, and then you see it the same things happening through different perspectives, and then you finally get like what the main girl played by Kiernan Shipka is seeing. Um, so next is Black Swan, another psychological horror that it used to be for me really high up, but I'm just not into watching ballet. So I had to be honest after this like most recent time watching it. I was just like, I do like it still, but the ballet is like kind of rough. I'm not into watching that. But it is very good. Natalie Portman, Mila Kunis do a really great job, and it's I do think still a very good horror movie. But it's just the last time I watched it, at least that's where it's gonna fall. Maybe I'll, sometimes you watch a movie and you're just not feeling it at that time, so that could be one of those things. Um, Next is a very strange horror movie, but I do like it. It's called Bug, and deals with psychological horror. It's gonna go, won't watch much, but again, I've just watched it so many times, and there's not really like horror like you think. Like a movie called Bug, you're thinking it's gonna be like, oh, there's gonna be some crazy bugs or something, but it's more of like a mental trauma or mental bug, if that makes any sense. It's like the bug that gets into your brain or something. It's not like a literal bug, but yeah, it's we have Ashley Judd, and I forget his name. I normally know it right off the top of my head. Um, he was Zod in Man of Steel. He plays a really good role in this. They kind of start to date, and you find out he was in the army and he was experimented on, and whether he was the problem, like it was the experiments that did it to him, or whether he was always just mentally unstable. You don't really find out. It's just kind of like hinted it could be either one. And by the end of it, these two, because of a trauma that she lost her son, he was kidnapped, and her husband is abusive. And now she lives on her own in some like really shitty apartment, or like motel room or something. And she's like a bartender in like Texas. Um, it's good and it's really effective, but it's just not really horror the whole way through. I mean, it is, but it's not like you think. Uh, the first time you watch it, you might even hate it because it's so you're like, okay, where are these bugs? Like that was the person who recommended this to me. actually didn't recommend it, I guess I should say. He told me about the movie, he told me how much he hated it. Said I was expecting like crazy bugs or something because it's called Bug, and then he told me about it. I'm like, well, that actually sounds kind of interesting. And then like that was like fifth or sixth grade whenever this came out, and then it was like just after high school. I'm like, I remember that movie. He told me about it, and I was like, let's give it a watch, and I enjoyed it. So um, next is the Canal. This is like I want to say Irish horror movie or something. It's pretty good. I liked it, but I've watched it twice now, and it's had more effectiveness on the people that I've watched it with than me. I do like it, but there's like the ending of it. I think is really good. Like the last 20 minutes, I think is great, but like it's really slow, and it's so psychological horror, and it's like drawn out. It just feels longer than it is. Both times I've watched it, I've been like, this is a little bit boring at times, and it never really like does a good job of tricking you. Like it's trying, but I do really like it still enough to own it, and it is worth buying. I just won't watch it much. So next is Candyman, the original. Um, 1 second here. I would say it's worth buying. It's not one of my favorites, and I do think it is a great movie, but it's um, it's not as good to me as these other three. Like I do enjoy Candyman a lot, but it's not like a favorite of mine. Um, and then it's kind of the same how I feel about the new one. I actually like them both pretty closely. I do probably like the original a little bit more. I'm having such a hard time here putting this in this box and trying to make them fit. But yeah, that's how I feel about the Candyman movies. They're really good, and I would say that they're understandably some of the better horror movies that came out in the '90s, well, at least the first one. And then I do really actually enjoy the remake or the sequel. Uh, so next, Child's Play. This kind of goes in between worth buying and great movies because it is a great movie again, but uh, that's I'm gonna say it's there. And Child's Play 2, I think I like a little bit more, but I'm still gonna put it here because with these great movies, these are ones that I'm gonna say like I will watch it mostly any time and enjoy it. And like with the worth buying, it's like I kind of have to be in the right mood. Um, like Child's Play is like a really fun horror movie that yeah I could probably sit down and watch it anytime, but like I'm not like hey let's watch Child's Play. Where me I'm like let's watch 30 Days a Night or let's watch Antlers or then in my favorites I'll watch and always like it anytime. So um, next ones I'm gonna be honest the Conjuring movies I don't feel they're as good as most people. Um, I don't know I'm putting it there both of them. I think the first one's slightly better, but I just don't love either of them. I I don't know. They're just kind of basic haunted house movies to me. I like it every once in a while, but if it wasn't for Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, I really wouldn't care. So next is Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's a little outdated, and I do like it still. And I would probably, if you asked me right now which one I would rather watch, Creature from the Black Lagoon or The Conjuring, I probably would pick Creature from the Black Lagoon. Um, so it is a worth buying movie, but I'm not gonna watch it much because it is kind of old. Dark and the Wicked, I think it goes there for me. It's it's a little bit slow at times, and I think the longer it goes, it starts to like lose my interest at times. But I do really like it. The beginning, like hour, is great. Whenever you see like some really disturbing stuff happen, um, and I do think that it's one of the better horror movies to come out in the past few years. But it's just some movies just aren't as good in my opinion, and it's just by the end I'm kind of like ready for it to end. So, Death Watch, I'd say I won't watch it much. Um, I've watched it 3 times, and the idea is better than the execution. Some of the special effects haven't held up since the early 2000s, but it is good. It's about a squad of World War One soldiers that, after a battle, they're kind of just like walking through the woods, and they think that they were attacked with gas, and then they're like, "Oh, it's just fog," and then they get to this German trench, and there's soldiers in there, and they're telling them, like this trench isn't safe, and then they realize that the ground or the land that they're in is evil, and it's trying to kill them one by one for different reasons. But it's kind of slightly got its psychological like horror to it, but um, it's just not as good with the how it's held up in some ways, but it's still decent and it's really slow at times. Dracula, I'm gonna put it same with Creature from the Black Lagoon because I like Creature from the Black Lagoon a lot more. But um, if I'm putting that there, it's definitely I understand why I own it. It is a good movie, but I just don't really think I'm gonna watch that time and time again. Um, The Exorcist. I'm gonna say that it's worth buying. It's not one of my favorites, but it is very good. It's definitely a great movie. It's just me personally, it's not in my favorites. And honestly, I'm debating with Alien because that's kind of how I feel. It's like it's a great movie, but like, is it really one of my favorites? That's kind of the problem is with my list for me. I'm like overanalyzing the shit out of this, but great movies to me, yeah, like there are great movies and worth buying and won't watch much, but how I feel about them. So I think I'm actually going to move Alien out of great movies, and because I actually, if you asked me which one I'd want to watch right now, I probably would pick Exorcist over Alien, but uh, they're both really good movies, so I don't know. That's a little tough, but either way, I'll just be honest. I don't want to like just because it is a great movie, put it where it doesn't belong. Event Horizon, I do really like this one. The setting mixed in with just the psychological horror of it is really good. I like the cast. I do think it's not aged with the special effects very well though, and it definitely was chopped up a little bit with the editing, but it's still pretty good. And it's another really great sci-fi movie that I actually that's what made me realize why I think Alien is worth buying, not so much as a great movie to me, because I really like that more than Alien. So Event Horizon is a really good horror movie. Um, Final Destination, probably just gonna. Most of them are here. Um, I like this series, but it's not like great. Um, except for four. Four is trash. I'm gonna definitely put that one there. Um, Five actually is really fun though. I do like five. I like the whole character that like the guy who looks like Tom Cruise in there. Um, and then the fog. That's tough. I think I'm gonna put it here. It's probably a better movie than that, but if I'm being honest, I've watched it 2 or 3 times now, and it's just kind of slow pacing, but I do really like it, and I like the ghosts that you don't really see their faces; they're just kind of like dead sailors. But it is a little bit slow. So, um, this movie, believe it or not, The Forest, I thought was just okay the first time I saw it, but the more I've watched it, I've actually really liked this movie. Um, and I know a lot of people are probably like, your list is so screwed up. But I don't want to be like dishonest and tell you like, oh, I really like or I'm like a major fan. Let's just say The Conjuring, just because it's popular. Like, I want to tell you exactly how I feel about these movies. And The Forest, the more I've watched it, while it isn't a great movie, I still really like it. I don't know why. I think it's the setting, and just there's no setting or no movie that I've seen, at least other than this one, that's set in Okigahara Forest, um, or the Suicide Forest in Japan. And yeah, I really like that. So it's for me, it's just because of the setting. Stories, but I like that was kind of like the reason why she went in there was because of her sister, and everything else is just whatever. But I still really like it. Um, Frankenstein, I gotta put it right there with Dracula and stuff. Most of those movies are going to be there. Ghost Ship, I haven't seen this in years. I just bought it, but it's because it's been so long. I just got to put it there because I mean, it is worth buying obviously because I bought it, but it's just before I rewatch it, I want to just put it as kind of mediocre as possible because I don't remember how I felt really. Um, and now we're getting into some two in a row that are up in my favorites again. Um, Ghost Stories, really good horror movie. I really enjoyed this one. The first story and the last one especially are really good of the three, and then how all the stories connect to the main characters like real life uh, was like really good. The only one I'm not a big fan of was the middle story, but it is what it is. It's not terrible or anything. It's just where the first two are ghost story, or the first and third are ghost stories. This middle one is like about demons in the woods coming alive. It just was strange, but I still really like the movie. Besides that, like 15 minutes being just kind of weird. And then Grave Encounters, my favorite found footage horror movie. That I'm not a big fan of that genre, but the two that I own, at least the two that's coming to my head, Grave Encounters and As Above, So Below, are both really good. But Grave Encounters to me is like it just kind of the first time I watched it, I was like, wow, this is really good despite the not great special effects. They actually work really well for the movie. And then like that main actor, I don't know his name, I forget it, but he's really like fitting in that role. And if you've never seen that one, it's a group of paranormal investigators. They're basically frauds, and they know that they've just got this idea that hey, they were like the pioneers of the uh, let's make a ghost hunting show, and so they do a few shows, and then on this one show that they're recording at this mental hospital, turns out it's really haunted, and they're like, oh, cool, we got the main guy Lance. He's like, we finally got actual real ghost footage. He's like, let's stay, and but because they stay too long, they get trapped in there. The building like changes and there's no exit, and they're just trying to find a way out, and like all the windows are now barred. The like the door to the roof is just a wall now. The door to the front door is now just a regular door that opens into another hallway, and it says exit, and then they turn around on the other side and it says exit there. So um yeah, that's a really good horror movie to me. This next one's gonna upset people, I realize, but I don't really care. um, Halloween. I like four Halloween movies. These four that I have here. But if I'm being honest, it is my least favorite of those four. It takes so long to get into where you see Michael Myers do what he's known for doing. He's more of just stalking them for a while, and it just takes a long time. And I've just seen this now so many times that I'm just like, I'd rather watch Halloween 2, which is everything that I like about Michael Myers, just being brutal. And this scene where he sneaks up on that couple in like the hot tub and just pulls their head out of it and her face starts like melting off. That's like one of the best scenes in the series. Where he picks the woman up, where he stabs her with a scalpel and he just lifts her up, and then her like feet are shaking and her like shoes fall off. And I kind of consider it like you could either end the series there, or you could go straight to H2O, and that's where the series ends. But I honestly, those other Halloween movies, I'm not a big fan of. I really don't. I like the series when it's what I like. I know that sounds weird, um, but Halloween one I think is good, and it did a good job of starting off everything. I just think it's too slow for me. Halloween 2 is like, all right, we know what Michael Myers is. Let's just get in there and make him do whatever he does really good at killing, being, stalking people. And H2O, not as good, but I do think it is a really good movie. And so I'm going to put Halloween 3 under worth buying also. It is strange, but I like to watch, of all of them, that one has the most Halloween feel to me. And H2O, I'd say, is right there with it. Um, so I that's my honest feeling of the series. Having watched those four movies now plenty of times, Halloween 2 is just like too good compared to all those other ones to me. But Haunted Mansion, I just rewatched this one, but it is a kids horror movie, so it's gonna go there. I'm running out of room. I think I can expand this. Let's see here. Yeah. There's not going to be very many. Why do I own this? I think that's actually it. But still, I wasn't expecting this many in. Um, won't watch much, but that is the truth. It's just I've either watched it too many times or it's just not like a favorite of mine or something. Let me keep going down with this. Next, we have a Robert De Niro. It's kind of more a thriller at times, but I mean, it has enough horror in it that I guess you kind of consider it that more. Um, I'm just going to keep that. Why do I own this where it's at? These three. Because like I said, I'm not adding any more to that. But Hide and Seek is going to go right there. It's all right. It's not great. Actually, I'm going to move this down. My OCD. uh, there. So yeah. Um, it's good, but it's not great. It's fine for what it is. The more I've watched it, I'm like, all right, this kind of more of a very like tame horror movie, or it's more almost thriller at times. But I do like it. So it's got Dakota Fanning, Famke Jensen, and Elizabeth Shue in it, and everyone does a great job. Nothing like wrong with what they do. It's just like I said, some movies just aren't as good. That's all. Hollow Man. Um, I just watched this in full for the first time recently, and I do really like it. I actually like it more than Hide and Seek, but it's just not. Yeah, I guess that is where I'd put it, because I don't think it's as good as these movies right here, but it's still fun. I Know What You Did Last Summer. I like this one more than most people because it's the very first slasher that I ever watched, and it's probably the first actual horror movie that I watched. I gotta make some of these bigger. Um, so I like it more than most, but I do have to say it's not the best slasher. And even the second one I'm putting here. So I just like the original a little bit more, uh, and I kind of like the cast in the original more. But still good movies. None of these I hate except for these three. I The only reason I own these two is because it's in a box set, and actually all three of these because they're in a box set. But I Trapped the Devil. It's really kind of a slow horror movie that is good, but it's just not one that you're gonna watch time and time again because of its slow pacing. Um, Jacob's Ladder. Uh, I'm trying to compare it to the movies in the list with it because I like this movie. I'm gonna put it here. It's kind of like in between this and Worth Buying, but yeah, I guess that is where I'd put it. Um, that is a pretty good psychological horror movie that kind of mixes like war in there. It's a Vietnam vet who comes home and he's got a lot of like trauma, and he starts seeing like weird visions and like demons and things, and he's questioning what he's seeing. Is it real? And people that he once knew are like dying that he was in the war with, and just people think he's crazy. He's seeing like weird just tentacles and like things growing out of people's head. And it's a strange movie, but like it makes sense once you know like get to the end. But the first time I watched it, I was like, it's okay. But yeah, for me, it's admittedly I probably won't watch it as much as some of those other ones. Jeepers Creepers again, won't watch it much. I like it, but it's just not as rewatchable. The Lodge. This one, though, every time I watch it, I kind of dislike it a little bit more. Um, it's not bad or anything. It's just really slow. The Descent, though, mm, I think it is probably good enough for me. I like it enough to say it's in my favorites. It is probably like low favorites, but I do really like it. I would say I like it more than 30 Days of Night, Antlers, and Event Horizon, but I don't like it as much as these other ones that are in that list. Maybe Black Coat's Daughter, but those other ones not so much. And then lastly here, The Invisible Man. I probably won't watch it much, but I do like it more than all the other um, classic Universal movie monsters. So that's my honest list. I'll go over it really quickly. I'm going to look at all these, and I'll let you know if maybe any of them can move up or down. So actually, I'm going to move these movies here. I'm not going to worry about organizing them too much, but I do like them, but I haven't had a desire to rewatch them since. So that's probably where I'd put those ones. Mm, I do watch Halloween more than all these other ones, but I don't know. I think that's probably right. Um, I'm debating with Candyman if I want to put it up more, like into great movies, because I do really like it, and I've watched it since I've gotten it. Watched the original Candyman like 4 times, the remake 3 or 4 times. Um, I think I'll just keep what I've got here. So that is how I feel in these movies. Like I said, none of those in those first 4 tiers are bad. It's just they're not particularly my favorites compared to those other ones. The next row, so I said A through L for this one, and then it's is it? Did I go L with this? Oh shit! I just forgot where I looked. So what was the last one I put up? The Lodge. Yeah. So A through L, and then M through Z. Um, those have some of my favorite horror movies in it, and then really great horror movies also. So a lot of the ones that I'm kind of just like I can go a while without watching, but I'll still like to watch. Um, that was here, but some of the other ones are going to be in my favorites because I'm going to do is keep this list, and I'm just going to um, basically just erase all these posters, maybe kind of reorganize the size of them. We'll see here. I'm going to this time actually look at them and be like, okay, this one's going to go here because this time was just I walked up and I was like, okay, this is how I feel right now. this is where it's going to go. So, thanks for watching, everyone that sat through all this. I'm not quite sure how long it is. This is the first time I've ever used OBS Studio. I just got this computer Tuesday, and it's Friday, and I was like, let's figure this out. And this was a lot of fun. I do enjoy doing these tier lists. I've been wanting to do one for a while, so I'm going to keep doing these because I think this is a lot of fun. So, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon. See ya.